Hi everyone. Selling your product to top executives in the pharmaceutical industry like chief scientific officers, VP of regulatory affairs or heads of R&D can be extremely daunting. It's because you're not just selling your product, but you're doing so in one of the most regulated industries with billions of dollars at stake. You have to deal with strict regulations, long timelines, and multiple stakeholders. If it sounds challenging, it's because it actually is. But folks in the pharma industry, today I, Aviral, am here to help you with how to sell and how to approach these top executives in the pharmaceutical industry so that you can get your message across in what is one of the most supervised and controlled sectors in the world. The first thing to keep in mind while approaching these top executives is that you don't just have to be aware of your product or service, but really know the happenings of the industry. And in the pharmaceutical industry, it is way more critical than it might be in some other sector. It is important for you to know the FDA and EMA regulations. Understand how the FDA in the US or EMA in Europe sets different rules and guidelines for drug creation, promotion, and commercialization. Knowledge of 21 CFR Part 11, HIPAA compliance, and GXP standards is critical when approaching these executives. Besides regulations, it is imperative that you are familiar with the different phases of clinical trials, right from phase 1 to phase 4, and comprehend how these different phases impact sales strategies and techniques. As a salesperson in the pharma sector, it is imperative that you are aware of the life cycle of different drug patents and their exclusivity periods, as this can greatly impact the pricing. Furthermore, you should know what are the latest developments in R&D, which drugs are currently under production, as these are complex processes that can take up to 10 to 12 years. Lastly, understand where each pharma company in the market stands in the pipeline, whether they're in the discovery phase, preclinical trials, or are awaiting FDA or EMA approval. When you approach these executives, it is not enough that you know just about your product, but you must be aware of all the challenges that they face individually and that their company might be facing collectively. The second key aspect that you as a salesperson in the pharma industry need to focus on is relationship building. And this is essential because selling in this sector is a long game. Executives in the pharmaceutical industry are notorious for taking long times to make a decision because they've got different committees, R&D teams, governments, and lawyers on their back monitoring every action that they take. So for you to be different from your competitors, if you focus on building a relationship with these potential prospects, you can get a head start. And how do you build this relationship? Well, for that, you have LinkedIn and you have social selling. LinkedIn is your playground for social selling. Start by sharing content that would be relevant to your prospects. Potentially, there could be a breakthrough in gene therapy, or you might come across a post that talks about new FDA or EMA guidelines that can fast track some drug production. Engage with content like this, share it with your prospects, and you'll go a long way in building a relationship with them. The next thing that I want to talk about is one of the most critical elements for a salesperson in the pharma industry, and that is how to approach your cold calling and how to tailor your script towards your prospects. If the thought of cold calling a senior executive in a big pharma company sounds intimidating, that's because it is. But with the right homework and the right research, you can position yourself as someone who's really adding value to them. Before picking up the phone call, make sure that you've done your research on their recent FDA submissions, investments in R&D, drugs that are under production, and other clinical trials that might be going on. Pharma executives are laser focused on things like speed to market, innovation, and compliance standards. So if you begin your pitch with something like, hey, I noticed that your company is investing a lot in Alzheimer's research and our product can help improve the time to market for it, then you're going to get their attention right off the bat. Another key aspect to consider in your pitch is providing social proof of your offering. Executives want to know that the solution you're offering them has a proven track record of working maybe for somebody else. So make sure that if you have any testimonials, proof, or case studies demonstrating the viability of your solution, you mention it in your pitch. For example, something that you can mention in your pitch is how your service or product optimized the drug development process for a previous client, resulting in a 20% faster approval process of their clinical trials. Other things that you can mention in your pitch could be mitigating risks related to clinical trials, staying ahead of patent expirations, decreasing drug development costs, and maintaining resilience against supply chain delays. To take your pitch to the next level, customize it to address the specific challenges of the person you're talking to. For example, if you are talking to the head of supply chains at a company like Pfizer, especially at a time when they have a big vaccine rollout, then mention how you can help them optimize their production processes and decrease the costs while at the same time meeting the demand that they face. If you're talking to a chief scientific officer at a biotech startup, then you might want to position yourself as someone who can decrease the costs of R&D while still helping them maintain the quality to a high standard. In general, when you approach an executive in the pharmaceutical industry, remember to speak their language. These executives hate generic sales pitches. So instead of mentioning that you can help their company grow, speak about how you can streamline their clinical trials or decrease the time that they would need to get an FDA approval. This is the way that you can capture their attention. So one of the key things that you as a salesperson need to address, regardless of who you speak to, is regulation. Whether you're in the US or you're in Europe, there is always a regulatory body that is imposing strict guidelines, and all the top executives in the pharmaceutical industry have to live by these guidelines, regardless of whether it's set by the FDA or the EMA. So whether your solution is a software tool that helps manage clinical trial data or is something that can optimize their supply chains, you need to show them how it can help with compliance. Can your solution ensure that it meets all the compliance standards? And what would happen if it fails to meet particular FDA guidelines? These are the questions that you need to be able to address. Executives, especially heads of regulatory affairs or compliance officers, want to know that your solution is going to reduce the risks associated with it and not increase it. If you highlight how your offering is compliant with HIPAA or 21 CFR Part 11, then you will stand out instantly. Now let's talk about data. And pharmaceutical executives are obsessed with data. They will be way more receptive to your sales pitch if it is backed up by measurable outcomes and KPIs that interest them. So you need to know what types of data are they really interested in, and that's what I'm going to cover now. First up is the drug lifecycle data. From discovery all the way to the post-market surveillance, pharma executives need to have a clear view of their product's lifecycle data. This includes information on patent protection, exclusivity periods, and looming patent cliffs. They need to know how long their patents are valid for and how much it costs them to get it. Executives also seek revenue projections for different stages of a drug's life cycle, data on the drug's post-market safety, and pharmacovigilance. Another data type that executives are interested in is the clinical trial data, as this helps drive decisions about the viability and the success of future drugs. Executives are interested in the safety and efficacy reports from the different phases of a clinical trial. Additionally, they also seek status updates on the clinical trial transparencies, progress, timelines, and milestones. Besides these, some universal data points that all executives in the pharma industry are interested in are supply chain and regulatory compliance data, as these help them monitor production and forecast revenues. Now you might know everything about the pharma industry, have done your homework on your target company, and have prepared the ideal sales pitch. But there's one more thing that you need to consider, and that is the timing. Timing is everything in the pharmaceutical industry. You need to know where your target company is in their product life cycle. For example, are they in phase 1 of clinical trials, or are they pending FDA approval, or have they already got it? It is important because your approach and sales pitch will greatly depend on this. If your target company has just received an FDA approval, then odds are they're likely going to ramp up their manufacturing and supply chain. Whereas if they're still in phase 1 of clinical trials, they might be more interested in R&D instead of production. And if they've just had a drug or a big project rejected by the FDA or the EMA, then now is probably not the time for you to approach them, because really nobody wants to be hearing, hey, how's it going, after such a big setback. By identifying what is the right time to approach your target company and by pitching your product at exactly that moment, you place yourself in a wonderful position to get that closed won deal. Now, we've spoken a lot about the different challenges that await you when you try to sell your product or solution to an executive in the pharmaceutical industry. There are so many little details and nuances to keep track of, and it can be particularly challenging. Also, the risk that you lose a deal due to the slightest error is always very high. As such, it is important that you select the right tools in your arsenal that can make this entire process seamless and easy to implement. So now, I'm going to recommend you the tools that you need to simplify this complex sales process and get the job done. First up, you need a tool that can help you identify the key companies in the pharmaceutical sector and the key stakeholders within these companies. The companies in the pharma sector have broad reaches, and they span across different geographies and have different headquarter locations. If you have a company like Pfizer, for example, and you want to know what other companies are similar to Pfizer, then SURF is the ideal tool for it. It can help you find company lookalikes and identify who are the key personnel and decision makers within these companies. You can also search via various filters, be it size, location, or revenue. SURF can provide you with not only a company search, but also a contact search where you can identify key personnel based on their job titles and know who might be the end user or the decision maker of your product. In this way, SURF can help you build a list of leads and accounts that you can push into your CRM with the click of a button. And why do you need a CRM? Well, you need it to keep track of all the various conversations, outreach touchpoints, and messages that you have with these leads. CRMs can also help you keep track of meeting notes and create automated workflows that can help in your outreach processes. Some CRMs that you might consider are Salesforce, HubSpot, and Pipedrive. Also, as a salesperson in the pharmaceutical industry, you must invest in a tool such as Bombora that can provide you with buyer intent data. Buyer intent tools can provide you a heads up by telling you when a target company of yours is potentially investing in R&D for a new drug, or beginning clinical phase trials, or perhaps applying for FDA approvals. They can also provide you signals when there are updates in the leadership positions or strategic partnerships, perhaps with mergers or acquisitions in your target companies. Lastly, you need to ensure that all the data that you have in your CRM remains up to date, and for that you need a data enrichment tool. But don't worry, if you've already got SURF, then we'll do that for you in just the click of a button. And that brings us to the end of this video. So if you're someone in the pharmaceutical industry, then I hope you found this content useful. If you want to know more about how you can identify key accounts for you or know who are the right stakeholders to reach out to, then SURF can help you with that, and drop a comment below and I'll gladly help you with it. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button and subscribe to SURF's channel for more quality content coming your way.